Posting. Alex, I had so much fun. Oh my god.
Get it right off the right way. Monday morning, motherfucker.
Oh, oh, I'm just gonna hit end broadcast and just end this right off the bat.
It's the correct response.
So right up front, beginning of the show, we're not quite sure how this is gonna look on the other end, given that I left this bag full of stuff in my parents' lake house. Don't have proper Ethernet cord, so I'm running off kind of spotty Wi-Fi. So if there is audio lag, if there is some weirdness, you can blame me and yell at me in the chat. But do know that we're aware that there are problems, but unfortunately we can't do a whole lot about them. So as long as this even stays up, that will be. I feel that will be a victory given what I've tried to overcome this morning.
A minor miracle of sorts. Patrick, how are you doing? How was your weekend? You were out at the lake house. What did you end up doing this weekend?
I just a whole lot of nothing. We have this thing called the Kleppic Open. It's an annual tradition with my dad's side of the family where everyone gets together and pretends to be good at golf. I am especially trying to pretend to be good at golf, but that is not the case. I do fun, but I
Yeah.
am just. I should probably take a lesson. You can't just really go out there and make it up. Otherwise, you're
No.
just going to be hitting dirt for three
I've
and a
done
half
that.
hours.
I've done that thing where you pretend that you know how to play golf, and then you try to hit a golf ball, and the golf ball does not go the way that it goes when actual golfers hit a golf ball. In fact, it usually only goes maybe like 10 or 15 feet into the dirt, if that.
Yeah, which is, when you don't know what you're doing, it's still fun for maybe about an hour, and then it becomes a little frustrating.
Yeah,
But
maybe
I
just
will,
a tad.
but what it turned out pretty well, given that I don't really care how well I do, but I'm there, just because it's a family thing, and my brother cares very much how well he does, and I still managed to beat him by a stroke, which maybe I'm better
Nice.
than I think I am.
Patrick Klepek, stroking.
Exactly. Yeah. See.
Yeah.
Exactly. So. It is Grand Theft Auto 5 review day,
It is.
the eve before the release of Grand Theft Auto 5. There were some mild ambitions of maybe trying to have Jeff Gerstmann on this morning show, but it fell through due to this thing called meetings and
Yeah.
obligations.
Some bullshit. I don't know. Dude is always up mad early, and then, the one time we actually get him up mad early with something relevant to talk to, he's got to go, do a bunch of meetings. That sucks.
It is. So while I was scrambling to even get this crappy version of internet up and running on my computer, you said you actually read a couple of the reviews, and there's a review up on the site. Jeff
Yep.
Jeff put one up too, so you should read that as well. But have you noticed any sort of through line of the criticism so far?
I have. So I basically, once 10 o'clock hit, I just started skimming and reading reviews. I got through Kotaku's, I got through Joysticks, Polygons, I skimmed through Destructoids and GameSpots and a couple of other ones that I'm going to go back and read the rest of at some point. Because that's what I do on big game day reviews. I like to go through and just try and read as many different perspectives I can. And the general perspective seems to be they made another Grand Theft Auto game. They made one that is a little bit better about supporting the kind of side experience of playing Grand Theft Auto, which is to say, yes, it has all the dumb mini games, which are all kind of meaningless and whatever, but that there's probably a little bit more to the kind of non-straight story through line experience than in previous iterations, which is something that series has always had a little bit of a problem with. The other, and this is the most pointed criticism I keep seeing, is that the satire, as good as the Housers are, or at least have been about skewering kind of American culture and the American dream and what have you, there is that satire remains very much the same in that it takes a lot of the same pot shots. It punches at about the same weight class it's been punching at for at least the last few sequels, and doesn't really do anything too spectacular in terms of its satire or its comedy. It just kind of takes a lot of the same shots, and I guess that doesn't really surprise me because in talking to Jeff before he wrote his review, and he actually says this in his review. There's sometimes a feeling that especially with the GTA games, to some extent with all Rockstar products, but especially with the GTA stuff, there's usually a feeling that those games are kind of developed a little bit in a bubble. They're kind of, the Housers have their little cone of seclusion that they like to operate in. They don't seem like they're really too worried about what other people are doing in the open world genre. They just want to make their thing. And in doing that, it's something I felt a little bit in GTA 4, and obviously I haven't played 5 yet, so I can't say for certain whether this is the case, but it seems like because they're hitting a lot of the same notes with that stuff, the humor and the bitingness of it is not necessarily there, which I think in some cases might be giving some people the not so great feelings about some of the stuff that they go for in that game when it comes to some of the comedy bits, because it doesn't feel all that fresh or that new. It seems like it's just kind of hitting a lot of the same points, and that's, for me, I love the GTA sense of humor, but I also have played through it, 5-6 times at this point if you count like the PSP games and stuff. So, hearing that they're kind of, still making fun of reality TV, still
there was I think a line in Jeff's review where.
No, go ahead.
There was a line in Jeff's review, I think, where he talked about where you can, you take that sort of biting sort of criticism, or of the American dream, the sort of satirical nature that Rockstar has done in the past, and they've, you just kind of swap out. Well, okay, this time they're cracking jokes about, fracking and reality shows and things that weren't there the last time around, and that maybe the jokes do land, but on some level it starts to feel a little strange that. The structure is so similar. They're just putting in updated references.
Yeah, and for me, it's like I didn't really expect anything too different because, if we're really looking honestly back at the GTA series, and I've been on board pretty much since 3, which I think is where most people would say they got on board. There is a distinct lack of meaningful evolution when it comes to the sort of the comedy writing, the satire, that sort of stuff. Like it is just it's a template, and they're just putting in the references that like they're looking at CNN one day. It's like, all right, well, what's everyone yelling about right now? Okay, well, we'll just like you said, the fracking and the meth dealing stuff and all that shit. Like it all feels a little bit like. They're just kind of going down the usual cultural touchstones with their same Mad Lib's tablet of comedy. I'm probably going to be fine with that because I think that as much as it's been done, that Mad Lib's tablet is usually still pretty funny. But it is a little disappointing to hear that they haven't really branched out that much. I mean, the narrative, it sounds like, is definitely more ambitious in the sense that it has the 3 characters. The way you switch around between those characters and the way that the missions are designed with those characters' personalities, like the crazy meth dealer dude is the one who does all the mayhem and psycho missions, whereas, the sort of more, as Jeff put it, gangster shit is reserved for Franklin, who is the character from the sort of, Compton equivalent in the game. And that, that stuff sounds interesting to me. It sounds like fun. I'm just a little bummed that they didn't necessarily branch out a little bit, and didn't try to do something a little bit more. I don't want to say radically different, but at least something just a little bit shifted away from the tried and true Grand Theft Auto sense of humor.
Yeah, it does seem like and again, this is all from a perspective of reading other people's impressions of a game that we'll both start playing tomorrow, but that it does feel like maybe in some ways they're playing a little safe, and maybe you have to play it a little safe when you're spending 4 to 5 years developing one of these games. But the reason GTA 3 and that trilogy in general is looked up at so endearingly is because every single time a new one of those came out, it was just push the industry forward. Like it was just, that's the reason. Other than them just being terrific games, like there was so much anticipation around them, and I think 4 did that, and so, as many issues as I do have with 4, did that in some pretty important ways as well. And the fact that they decided to take such a tonal shift and say we're going to get serious, that was pretty ballsy of Rockstar, given how like wild and crazy and comedic they were getting in San Andreas. But it does feel like in some ways more of the stuff where they're pushing the boundaries is happening outside of the GTA series and not as much in the GTA series, which GTA, even a slightly less impressive or revolutionary GTA, is still a pretty damn good game that I'm going to have a lot of fun with. That's kind of like when we start talking about games like a Grand Theft Auto 5, it also comes with all these caveats that it's like your expectations are so high for what a company like this can pull off that when they don't go the extra step, it is all the more glaring than it would be with any other developer or any other franchise, because they've set the expectations so high for what they're able to accomplish every time.
Yeah, and those expectations obviously are kind of a blessing and a curse, and that's something that I think makes GTA Review Day always pretty interesting because I don't know. I mean, when you look back on that series and its history with criticism, it's like, yeah, those games usually just got fives and tens and whatever. I mean, those have always kind of been the people have always fawned over the GTA games. Again, less so with the PSP titles, but with all the main releases, like people have loved them to death. And then there's always, and especially with 4, there's like this little bit of backlash toward that, and in the case of 4, I think that some of it was justified, some of it, I still think GTA 4 is a really good game. I think that it sometimes it gets unnecessarily shit upon because it is definitely like the least, I would say, thrilling or exciting of the GTAs, of the main ones, but reading the reviews today and then kind of looking briefly at some of the comment sections and immediately seeing people like latch onto every negative response and simultaneously every positive response and sort of picking it apart like crazy. That's why I'm kind of glad I've never really had to review these games, because I just the way that people sort of latch onto every little detail and have preemptive opinion forming is already a major issue in video games. I feel like that is never more the case than with Grand Theft Auto. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but yeah.
No, that is absolutely the case, and it's why I made my offhanded comment this morning of I was more looking forward to reading the comments than I was to reading the actual reviews themselves.
Good luck with that.
I mean, and mostly that's just because of the expectations that go into this, and this game more than any other highlights sort of the sort of like people are going into reviews to sort of have their established expectations sort of just validated, as opposed to I wonder what this this reviewer actually thought about the game. And often the comments have a cognitive dissonance where it's just more about, well, grr, I'm so angry that they haven't validated what I thought the game was going to be, or with this other reviewer that I like more. And I mean, that's just a traditional disconnect between the reviewer and the people who maybe consume the reviews that isn't going anywhere. Like it's been a problem. It's always going to be a problem, and it just becomes highlighted and part of a snark fest on Twitter as that sort of plays out on GTA Review Day. But I jumped into the series at 3. I played a little bit of 1 and 2, but is that where you jumped into?
Yeah, I never played 2. I tried 1 later on because I got it as part of a Steam bundle at some point, and I was like, well, I just kind of want to see what this was like. And yeah, those early GTA games, I understand, the pre-3D GTA stuff doesn't do a whole lot for me personally. So 3 was where I started, and that was the one that hooked me. And I've played, I think, with the exception of one of the handheld ones, like one of the DS games, I think I've played pretty much every GTA thing since then.
Yeah, and I started in 3, and what was interesting was that 3 was given, the fact that it had sort of a pretty good story in there was one of the big reasons that, other than the fact that it had this big sort of like living, breathing open world, I never finished 3. Like I never got even close to finishing 3 because I was so transfixed by the world itself that I just sat around with friends, swapped around the controller, and we basically just had races to see how long you could maintain, a full star status and still be alive. And then at some point, you'd have someone that was smart enough to remember there was a cheat code, and they'd swap in a tank and then blow everyone's time away.
Yeah, I did some similar. I mean, I ended up finishing all the PS2 ones, and it took me a long time to finish 4, but I did. But I would do the same thing, especially in Vice City, actually. Vice City was the one me and my friends really got super hot into, just sitting around and playing and just driving around the world, because that soundtrack and just the visual aesthetic of that game, that one probably had some of my favorite missions of any of the GTAs, but like in terms of just running around that world and doing dumb shit, Vice City was the first one that, like, 3 was great. 3 had a lot of good environmental stuff, but 3 also, silent protagonist, not as good of a soundtrack, it was like a lot of formative ideas that hadn't really come to fruition yet. I think Vice City for me was the one that solidified that franchise as like the thing, the sort of the cultural touchstone that it is now.
Didn't Vice City have a film grain too, that like a filter you could turn on and off? Am I crazy?
I don't really remember. There could have been something like that. That also could have ended up being like a PC mod at some point. I don't really remember, but I do remember that it had a slightly different, visual hue to it that might have just been something like that, kind of transposed over the main graphics. But I don't really remember it completely.
And then I want to say I played the first couple hours of San Andreas, but for whatever reason that one didn't hook me. I don't know if maybe I was just tired of the genre, or maybe it was too big, or I was playing. I can't even remember what. Was probably just more interested in getting drunk at college at the time, because I think San
Sure.
Andreas came out just as I was entering college. But that's like the one glaring of the sort of modern GTA games that I like didn't spend any time in. Yet, I constantly hear that that is some people's favorite GTA game.
That one almost lost me a couple of times because it's so sprawling and it's so there's so much weird dumb shit to do, because that was the first one that introduced to shit like where you had to go eat or you had to go exercise. You had to do all these like little minute things to kind of keep your life in order. I remember a couple of times thinking that that was just more than I really wanted to deal with. I didn't want my character to get fat. I didn't want him to get lazy, but I also didn't necessarily want to go, have him do all these extra things. So, I a couple of times I almost fell off of it, and then I came back and I ended up finishing it. And I don't. I think that a lot of people love San Andreas because it is the largest of that era. It's like the biggest GTA game of that era. It's got one of the most distinct atmospheres. That and I think Vice City probably have the two most distinct of the series. And then it also it has that jetpack. People love that fucking jetpack. That thing. That was sort of like everyone's favorite traversal thing for a long time, was just flying around in that damn jetpack. I don't blame them. Jetpacks are awesome. So that's a reasonable thing to latch onto.
Well, I think that highlighted sort of the absurdity of where that franchise had sort of come to a head, because I think you know, GTA, 3 on has always had this real tonal disconnect between, you have a narrative that is often pretty serious, but is, willing to go comedic and go light and be weird, if it wants to do that, but is often sort of grounded and pretty serious and trying to, for, at least from the Hauser's perspective, like try and impart some sense of the human experience, funneled through this crime spree. But that and it seemed like they just seemed to be having more and more fun with their ability to do stuff in this world, while they would then simultaneously have this serious narrative. And then with 4 seemed to recognize that, as I don't know if it was because the technology was allowing them to create more realistic worlds, and they sort of saw that this disconnect wasn't working for them, or they it's hard to say, because these guys unlike a lot of other prominent designers, aren't exactly out there in the media that often explaining themselves or justifying themselves, which I think also lends to sort of the mythic nature of these games, is because with everything else, we know so much about all these games, why they're made, the motivations, and Grand Theft Auto, that largely still remains kind of a mystery for as big as they are.
Yeah, I mean, it's, they're the only people who can get away with sending an email a week ahead of time saying, hey, we're going to update the website with a new trailer next week. Get ready for it. Because from any other developer or publisher, that would just sound like really obnoxious hubris. And even, frankly, from Rockstar, it's a little bit like obnoxious hubris. But, they can get away with it because they know everyone is hanging on every goddamn detail of those games. As soon as they unveil those things, as soon as they have them in a place where they can show them, they know that they have everyone in the palm of their hand. And, whether that mystique is still justified or not, I'll leave up to people to decide after they've had the chance to actually play 5. I'm certainly not going to make a judgment call on it, but I also think it is. I'm starting to wonder if that kind of, mentality, if that sort of, if GTA's mystique and its sort of, that overall vibe is going to continue to hold. I don't know. It just seems like culturally, games are shifting in a lot of different ways. Grand Theft Auto has been, for all the ways it's evolved, it's been functionally the same since 2001. They've continued to add things, they've continued to change things, they've continued to tweak things, but they have been making Grand Theft Auto games like this for 12 years now. Not regularly, but, for like 12 years now. And I don't know, I start to read things in the reviews now where people are like starting to point out the fact that, hey, these guys are really terrible at writing female characters. Hey, sometimes this casual racism gets a little too not casual and gets a little fucked up in places. Hey, maybe it's kind of weird that there's waterboarding in this game. You know, like shit like that just, you know, like 5 or 6, 7 years ago, people would have just been like, that's amazing. That's so cutting edge. That's edgy as shit, man. That's crazy. And now people are maybe a little different, a little more sensitive, a little bit, you know, there's just a different culture around games, and I'm wondering if some of that stuff is really if it's gonna be able to maintain that mystique and that air of sort of, you know, intense importance, you know, after all is said and done with this one.
I mean, as someone that likes the GTA games, but by and large tends to have a much more affinity for the other games that Rockstar produces. I've, you know, unabashedly a huge lover of Bully. Think it's the best thing that they've ever put out. With the exception of the Mexico arc and Red Dead Redemption, I think that game is unbelievable. That ending is easily top 10 endings in a video game. Love that game. Didn't care for Max Payne 3 that much, but in general,
3 was good. I really liked 1 and 2, and I mean I know that was, you know, more Remedy than right. Rockstar, but they obviously had put their stamp on it too. So. But
I guess what I'm getting at is that GTA is this enormous moneymaker. It is sort of it has been the pillar at the center of their parent company, Take-Two, for years, while Take-Two has tried to, and been largely successful at, finding other avenues of income in between tentpole GTA releases. And even if the GTA series never, I guess, I don't know, progressive is the wrong word, but like if it doesn't continue to be as interesting as I would like to see that series be, if all it does is continue to be this tentpole franchise that in the peripheral allows Rockstar to continue being weird and strange and trying crazy things, like, then please let the GTA series stick around, be super popular, because it's largely irrelevant to me in the long term whether that series continues to be, you know, interesting to me, because they're clearly interested in doing crazy stuff on the side. It's not like they're becoming less relevant, but, you know, it's just not. I don't care if the GTA series sort of falls off for me as long as it continues to make money and allows them to do whatever the hell they want, because they're definitely maintaining that edge in other places, even if it, you know, isn't necessarily manifesting itself in GTA 5 nearly as much.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, because I'm with you on most of those Rockstar games. I mean, even the Warriors was, you know, one of those games.
Hell yeah, that's a great game.
Yeah, that is a spectacular game that I've actually thought about replaying recently. Yeah, I mean, I love it when Rockstar gets weird, when they get experimental, when they get crazy, and, you know, I think if I have any problem with the GTA series over the last couple of iterations, again, not having played 5, so I can't say one way or the other about this one, but is that, you know, for all the experimenting and all the crazy shit they're doing, a lot of it is just, you know, we have this formula for what a Grand Theft Auto game is supposed to be and has to be. And, you know, this one at least futzes with the narrative formula, and that it has the 3 protagonists. It does some different stuff there. The stuff with the heist mission sounds really interesting. I like the idea that you actually have to go collect things like a getaway car and, you know, ski masks and guns and all that shit. Like that sounds pretty great. I wish that they would let themselves get a little. I wish that they let themselves branch out of the typical arcs of crime fiction that they sometimes seem to lean a little too heavily on. Like, I'm glad that they are, you know, heavily referencing, you know, things like Heat in this game, you know, when it comes to the heist stuff, but like, that movie came out in 1995, and they've referenced Heat before, and other games have done that before, and it's like, cool, that's great. I love this heist stuff. I love that they are including a soundtrack that sounds sort of like the Heat soundtrack at times. But, you know, a lot of this crime fiction stuff that you guys are leaning on is stuff that you have leaned on before. You know, I would love to see them find a way to spiral out a narrative that is not just, you know, a lot of references to movies and TV shows and books that they have already referenced many times over, I guess, is kind of what I'm trying to get at.
And I think, you know, when you read reviews that, you know, start to comment on, you know, maybe some of the casual racism that maybe doesn't hold up as much anymore, and, you know, the lack of female characters, I think the through line of those comments, don't necessarily look at them necessarily at their face value of what they're saying. Is like, man, I wish Rockstar would just, you know, I think the backlash to that is like, oh, we don't want them to shoehorn in anything just to be, you know, progressive and liberal, which is, you know, part of their satire, but is not necessarily reflective in the narrative itself. But I think where those comments come from a place where it's just echoing what you're saying, which is that some of the touchstones are just becoming kind of boring and cliche. And I'd like to see them pull from different sources, pull from different places, because they clearly work at best when they are sort of riffing off of things that they love and turning it into their own thing, which is fine. Like, you don't, the idea that everything is original is a fallacy. It's just a matter of what you can do based on what influences you, and that's fine. I think when you start to see this increase of comments about how they handle certain aspects of the narrative, mostly comes from a place of just saying, look, you guys are in a position to do whatever you want. Why not pull from some more interesting touchstones? It doesn't necessarily have to mean that there's a female protagonist or a female villain. I think that just, for me, it's mostly saying, you guys are in such a privileged position. It's not that you have to go out and blaze a trail with a female protagonist. It's more just, like, I think maybe we're becoming a little bit bored of the Heat references and the heists. Like, it's still going to be great. It's going to be a lot of fun. There are just diminishing returns to continuing to going back to that well, given that whenever they go outside of that well, and this is why I get so excited about their other games, because that when they go outside of that wheelhouse, it's so clear that they're unbelievably good at it, and that their talents and sort of that biting satire and their approach works well in other contexts, other settings, with other characters. And so all of these, I think, criticisms mostly are coming from that place of, you guys are better than this sometimes, and it's not that this isn't fun, but you could be doing so much more. So I don't know. That's where I feel like you get these offhanded comments about a female protagonist, but it is more about this idea that you guys do so much good work other places. Like, do a little bit more of that in Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah, it's not specifically about any one criticism. It's about the idea of just taking that series and taking those ideas and branching them out beyond what they've already done. And again, GTA 5, have not played it. For all I know, it could. I mean, what I know of that game comes from talking to Jeff and talking to other people who've played it. And what I gather is that it has a lot of the same references and a lot of the same ideas, just with a slightly more world-weary, middle-aged kind of bent on it, because, at least two of the characters are kind of middle-aged men sort of going through their crises, respectively. And I think that's interesting, because it does sort of, and Jeff said this to me when I was talking about the review a little bit, like, it almost seems a little bit like the Housers are kind of going through their own, not necessarily midlife crisis, but they are sort of reflecting on some of that stuff with that game, and those characters kind of going through some of that shit. But they're still doing it in the same way with the same kinds of jokes and the same kinds of references they've been making forever. And I think that's, the Housers like what they like. They're going to reference what they're going to reference. But, as you said, I love it when they try and just do something kind of batshit crazy and outside their comfort zone. And I'm worried that GTA is just too much of a comfort zone now. It's too much of, well, we just need to make this bigger and more violent, and let's look at pop culture references we can throw in. At a certain point, if that's all you're doing, you're making... because I don't mean this as insultingly as it sounds, but you're basically making the equivalent of like those, Friedberg and Seltzer movies, like, Epic Movie and Vampires Suck and that kind of shit, where you're just going down the list of pop culture references and just, okay, well, what's in the news today? All right, well, we're making fun of this. Here we go. Obviously those games are smarter than that, but it's at a point, if that's all you're referencing, it just feels a little bit lazy to me.
Yeah, I enjoyed Jeff's line of. In his review of finally saying he's done with driving, checkpoint races as a suitable open world side objective.
Well, especially after Saints Row 4, because I played a whole lot of that this weekend. I sank like solid 12 hours into that this weekend, and man, yeah, as soon as I got enough speed and jump to fuck around in that world and just kind of go all over the place, I have not gotten into a car except for a mission. Like, if they specifically make me drive someone somewhere, I will do it, but otherwise, I don't even use cars anymore. I'm starting to realize exactly how a little bit dull some of that driving stuff can actually be in those games.
Yeah, and one of the things that I was reminded of this weekend when I was at this golf outing, I have there's a lot of, the older crowd on my dad's side of the family, and then a lot of the kids that are a little bit younger than me, and most of my family, doesn't have an idea what I do for a living. They have a very casual interest in video games as much as anyone has a casual interest in sort of pop culture. And at least 5 or 6 times, both from the older crowd and from the younger crowd, I had people asking me about Grand Theft Auto 5. And all they could talk about was like how amazing the trailers on TV look, and oh my God, you can play golf in it. And it's sort of, it definitely grounded my perspective, especially as we have this discussion about, us having played each of these games and played them for dozens of hours, forgetting that I think sometimes that there are people like that who play a game every couple of years, like a Madden or Call of Duty GTA, these people that, we sort of talk about in the abstract but absolutely exist, and then they look at that and they just go, holy shit. And that's fine with them, because when they only sort of come to these games every once in a while, it's all the more impressive because these games sort of exist in a vacuum for them, as opposed to us who just, you just play through a lot of Saints Row. I just beat Saints Row, and we tend to look at these games, stacked up next to what's come before them and our experience from the one before. When for a lot of people, they look at that and it's just incredibly impressive, and I don't blame them when they explain it to me and why they think it looks interesting. I can't really refute it. All I can really say is that I play video games for a living, and then I sort of have a skewed perspective on what my expectations should be.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Well, have we talked enough about GTA 5 at this point? Especially considering we haven't actually had the chance to play it yet.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty fair. So you ended up playing a bunch of Saints Row then, huh?
I sure did. I played. I think I'm about the 80% mark in terms of stuff done in that game at this point. I think at this point I'm ready to say Saints Row 3 is still my favorite in the series overall, just in terms of stuff you do and the stuff that they throw at you and the characterizations and all that stuff. But Saints Row 4 is a hell of a game. That is a weird, fun, bizarre game that in a lot of ways that I wasn't necessarily expecting. Specifically, I was not expecting it to be as heavy on the side mission stuff as it is, because a lot of that game is revolved around extended versions of the side missions and new side missions that didn't appear in 3. Which a lot of people complained about the side missions in 3. A lot of people didn't really like them. I ended up doing all of them, which I did not expect. I normally am not the sort of person who takes the time to do a lot of those, but I ended up doing all of them in 3. I'm probably not going to do all of them in 4 because not all of them are that spectacular. I don't really like the platforming stuff or the speed run stuff or the running around races kind of shit, but everything else I've been doing, and I've been enjoying it quite a lot. The main thing that struck me that made me kind of, and this might have been something that we talked about at the panel at PAX. I can't remember I remember we were talking about it a little bit. I can't remember what the exactly what was said, but it's amazing to me how much that series has basically turned into the Fast and Furious franchise of video games. And, in the sense that it is so up its own ass with its weird, bizarre backstory. Like, it is constantly referencing it. It is leaning on it in a way that open world games don't normally do. And it is so obsessed with this notion of kind of like scumbag community, makeshift family kind of thing. Exactly the same way the Fast and Furious franchise is. But obviously this is much more parody than the movies are, but it's the same notion of, here are these characters that we are going to make you fall in love with because we are going to push them so hard in a way that we normally don't do with side characters like this in franchises like this, and it works so much better than it has any right to, because there's no reason in the world you should care about like half the at least 2/3 of the characters in Saints Row. They start out as kind of these weird throwaway stereotypes like early on in the series, and then between 3 and 4, somehow they made these people into some of the most endearing motherfuckers in crime game. And I don't even know how it happened, but I love it. I love that they have gotten so obsessed with this stuff, and I love that they have fleshed out these personalities in such a way to make them endearing.
Yeah, I actually found it pretty strange that or unfortunate, because if the loyalty missions, which I think were my favorite part of the game, and I don't want to give away too much about them just because
They're great.
The way they play out are so funny, and they do endear you to the characters in such a great way, and provide backstory that legitimately fleshes them out as like more than the 2D sort of cardboard cutouts that they could totally be for the kind of game that Saints Row is otherwise. It's if you're the sort of person that just sort of like mainlines the game, like you're going to be missing out on a whole lot of really interesting context and some of the most fun missions in the game.
Oh yeah.
In the loyalty stuff, and I think it's too bad that they made it side mission stuff, because some of the other side, like the quote-unquote side missions, where they just bundle together a bunch of the objectives you can do in the open world and try to present that as a side mission so you can unlock a weapon or a power-up or something of that nature. Like, I stopped doing those maybe about 4 hours into the game, because I was like, I'm on to you, game. These are all stupid. Like, you're just trying to get me to do the stuff in your open world that I didn't care for in the last game, and I don't really care for in this game either, because with Saints Row, I am there for the absurdity, and hacking stores is not not absurd or even necessarily all that fun. It's not a particularly great puzzle game. So
like the parts that are wacky in 4, you know, like shit like the America gun and the dubstep gun and, you know, the fucking smoking alien drugs out of a light bulb kind of shit. It's all really good, but I think 3 had a much more consistent through line of this is all just bananas top to bottom. Like, this one gets a little bit too, and I think this is because of the sort of nature of that game, where it sort of came from this DLC idea that they fleshed out a whole bunch into something more. There's just a little too individual parody skit stuff in there, like, and all the different sci-fi, you know, conventions they're trying to hit. Like, here's the random Armageddon reference with the Aerosmith song. Like, here's the, you know, the Matrix stuff that we're gonna toss in there. Here's the you know, I appreciate some of the conventions they're making fun of, and I like some of the jokes, but I think that, you know, honestly, like, the best parts of that game aren't even necessarily the comedy. It's the fact that you can just dive around that world like a stupid idiot, run up walls, and, you know, jump hundreds of feet in the air and fly around, and just, you know, the part where they made a Crackdown game in a weird way became the best part of that game for me, which was what I was not expecting at all.
I just wish there were about half the amount of orbs or whatever they call them in that game.
The clusters, yeah. There are a lot of them.
There's I think 1,000, and that's about 500 too many. I mean, I'm not a completionist anyway.
No.
So it's tough for me to sort of get engaged with that stuff to begin with. But I really enjoyed, like, going from mission to mission. You know, you get to a new area and then spend 20 minutes collecting them. Not because, and I wasn't even necessarily doing it because the collection part was grabbing me. It was because the platforming of all things was actually pretty satisfying, where I felt this real sense of control over the character, where it was fun. It was its own little mini game. Where every single time you'd shoot up into the air and think, like, oh, I can get there. Like, I can set down there. I'm going to jump, and then I'm going to glide, and I'm going to fall right into this cluster and grab it. And I found that to be endlessly entertaining, except when I realized that eventually I'm going to hit a cap where I'm going to have to spend so much time looking for the ones that I don't already have that, you know, I sort of lost interest. By the time the story was up, I'd gotten about as many as I was going to get, unless I was, you know, say within spitting distance. Like, if there were only 500 and I'd gotten 450 or something like that, I would have gone and done the last 50 just to explore the world some more.
Sure.
But, you know, as it stood, like, the idea of going around and collecting hundreds and hundreds of more of those was just too much for me. But yeah, you're right. Like, the fact that they actually made, you know, a better sequel to Crackdown than Crackdown 2.
I know, right?
Absolutely not what I was expecting when I turned on that game.
No, and, you know, to its credit, that made exploring Steelport again a lot more interesting, because I really liked driving around and doing dumb shit in Saints Row 3. I thought that, you know, because it was a new city at the time, you know, that was fun. That was fun to explore that area. But 4, it's like literally the same city, just with some different aesthetics. But adding those clusters on top of it made me want to get around everywhere and look everywhere for stuff. You know, again, I'm not a completionist either, but when you put so many of those things in so many obvious places, I'm going to try and collect as many of those things as I can before my time is done. And at this point, I think I've collected about 600 of those damn things. You know, I haven't really been keeping super count of it, but I have been regularly taking time out of my playtime to go make sure, and if there are clusters in, like, a general, you know, vicinity of me, I'm going to go get them. Damn it.
Were you one of those people that ever got obsessed with finding the packages or the pigeons in GTA games? Because I had some friends that not even really into video games that much, sort of people that just play a GTA game or a Madden or a Call of Duty, and they just went so far down the rabbit hole.
Oh yeah. In 3, I spent a lot of time looking for the packages, and I think I looked for a bunch of that stuff in Vice City as well. But I did not really get into it past that. I kind of Vice City. I didn't do a whole lot of it, and I think at a certain point I was just like, that is too much. That is just too much to try and collect. I just mostly want to look around, find all the actual interaction stuff I can do. Just collecting packages at a certain point is not that exciting to me. At least with the clusters, there's that upgrade element to it. And there are so many of them in so many obvious places, which is what helps too. When things are super obfuscated and hard to find, like it sounds like in GTA 5, there is a collectible equivalent in that game, but they are so spread out and they are so hard to find that a lot of people haven't found very many of them, which is great, and I'm sure the obsessive people will love it. I probably won't even bother looking for them. Patrick. Oh no. I think I lost Patrick. I think we've lost Patrick. Oh no. Oh dear. I don't know what to do here. We've ended up in a situation. Oh wait.
Hey,
there he is.
Hey, look. Oh man,
there he is.
It figured it out all on its own.
He's back.
Way to go.
There's
Google.
still a picture in the center of you with your frozen ass face. Oh, no, okay, now it's gone. But there was just a frozen picture of you with your mouth hanging open. That was pretty great. Oh, that's too bad.
Continue on. I don't know where you were, what point you were making.
I just talked a whole bunch about.
Keep going.
I just said a whole bunch about collectible stuff, which is to say, yes, I played I collected some packages in 3 and in Vice City, and then I stopped. So we'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Well, I regardless of what we have said or not said about GTA or having not played it, I'm psyched to get into it tomorrow.
Yeah, I am too.
If only because I want to see what that thing is. I think it is important to play those games. You should play them all the way to the end because they cause so much conversation. They generate so much interest from people that are close to games or outside of games that they are sort of cultural touchstones. They are big moments in the industry that I want to be a part of. I want to know what they are. Sort of no matter how I end up falling on that spectrum.
Yeah.
So I will be there tomorrow morning picking up a copy for myself. Even though I certainly had some pause after someone dumped something onto Pastebin that could be a bunch of BS, but alleging that they found references to PS4 and PC versions of the game because by all accounts it sounds like this runs just fine on current gen consoles.
Yeah.
But you can't help but look at it and go, my God, what that would look like on something a little bit better would just be something else.
What's gonna happen is I'm gonna buy. I already got the 360 version pre-ordered. It'll be here tomorrow. Like you, I am very much looking forward to playing it. I have never again, with the exception of the PSP games, there is no main GTA game I have ever not enjoyed. So on some level, so I'm sure I will enjoy this one plenty. As far as the next gen stuff is concerned, for me, this is a nice send-off for the current generation of consoles. I can't think of a bigger, more noteworthy note to go out on than, with a big-ass GTA sequel. So for me, if that's the last big thing I play on my 360, I'm totally cool with that. And I like having something like that to kind of be sort of, my bid adieu game for my 360. But whenever they decide to release their, Game of the Year DLC collection edition that comes out on PS4 and Xbox One and PC or whatever, then you know what? I'll probably play at least some of that too because, god damn it, those motherfuckers had their hooks in me for years. They're not letting go. I'm fine with that. I just know I'm going to end up playing it again at some point, and damn them for that.
Well, and we'll see how this GTA Online stuff goes. I've got a buddy of mine out here that he barely plays any games, but he's picking that up, and he's like, make sure you get the 360 version so we can play together. And I think GTA Online is this big question mark that, I think IGN and a couple outlets have had, some impressions of, but I have not read too much about it. But, that trailer they put out seemed mighty impressive, and the idea of going up in a plane with a bunch of your buddies and just parachuting out, and maybe that's the start of a heist. in some ways that sounds potentially more exciting than anything I've read about the game so far. If it works, if but it sounds like they're really going for it on this one, and damn, that the prospects of it, at least on paper, could be something else.
Yeah, I mean, if that works, if that really works the way they say it does, and if people really get into that, that could be the meaningful progression for that series that I've been kind of looking for all the way. I mean, it's not a narrative thing, but who says it has to be? For all I know, that could be the evolution.
But there is.
Well, yeah, there is and there's not. I mean, there's a narrative element to it, but it's not like the main narrative of the game is the online part. The online part is its own kind of weird separate deal. And, but if that deal turns out to be awesome, then that could actually be the thing that, suddenly, rekindles my super duper excitement for what that series can be in the future.
Yeah.
We'll see.
That's true. So it's a GTA week, so it is going to be. That's all people are going to be talking about all week. Let's see. We've got a couple of headlines that I pulled from that we'll riff on while people in the chat, if you want to @ me and shoot some questions over, we will call a couple of those before we wrap up the show. Weirdly enough, a lot of Kickstarters launched over the weekend. One for Mutant Football League. They're looking for $750K and.
Hang on, I just about spit out my water. That was pretty great.
And I feel like this one is even crazier. James Pond.
Yeah, I saw that one.
What?
Yeah. Hey, who remembers James Pond? That's my first question to the chat. Who remembers James Pond and actually played James Pond?
Are those games any good? I don't want to be judgmental. I've never played them, but that just seems like such a strange franchise to bring back. Maybe that is just.
I played one of the first ones right around the time it came out, like forever ago, and I remember zero about it. I remember nothing about those games. I knew that they existed, but until I saw that Kickstarter, I had completely erased that franchise from my head.
James Pond 2, codename Robocod. James Pond 3, Operation Starfish. Oh, and there was a James Pond in the Deathly Shallows in 2011. Oh, God. James Pond in the Deathly Shallows?
Yeah, that's
I'm not a big fan of puns. I'm not a big fan of that. That's a little on the nose. Oof.
It's a little much.
So I don't know. I was obsessed with Mutant Football League as a kid.
Oh, yeah. Everyone loved Mutant League Football. If you liked sports games at all, even on just like a tentative level, Mutant League Football was super, super fun. I didn't see who is behind that Kickstarter. Who is making that happen?
It's being made in Morton Grove, Illinois, which is not unreasonably far from where I am. Let's see. I'm trying to scroll down and see what the developers are. Let's see. Oh, it's got the original creative director, Michael Mendheim. He, according to the Kickstarter, has worked in the video game industry for over 20 years and is the original creator and designer of both Mutant League Football and hockey. He's the driving force behind the new Mutant Football League project and will oversee all design development. Looks like some of he worked on Def Jam Icon, I guess. Also Hip Hop Trivia for the Nintendo DS. And Army Men Sarge's Heroes for the Nintendo 64 alongside Battle Tanks. I want to say I liked Battle Tanks, but I don't. That is a very vague memory.
I don't remember a whole lot about Battle Tanks, to be honest with you.
Battle Tanks.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I mean, whatever. If someone wants to try and make a new Mutant League, Mazel Tov, good luck with that. I hope it's good.
750K is a lot of money.
Don't fuck it up. That's all I got. Don't fuck it up. James Pond, on the other hand, feel free to fuck that up, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know enough. I don't remember enough about James Pond to actually have a meaningful opinion about that. But, do whatever you like. Make James Pond a thing again, I guess. I don't know. That feels like we're really mining nostalgia there in the weirdest ways possible.
Yeah, is this where we're actually reaching like the bottom of the Kickstarter hole? Is when we start to get James Pond reboots? Is that like the first sign of the coming crowdfunding apocalypse?
I don't know if it's the first sign of the apocalypse, but it's definitely an indicator that something is amiss. It's the first indication that there is something evil stirring in Mordor. So let's just keep an eye on that for now.
Let's see. There was a Major Nelson on Twitter over the weekend took a photo of the first retail Xbox One box. So that stuff is starting to to roll out the production line, and it's sort of weird to see, like, yo, man, I could plug that box into my TV. There'd be nothing to play on it, nothing to
Yeah.
do with it, but it's weird to see, like, an actual box that is the equivalent of what we're going to be, purchasing in stores, and, you know, it's still 2 months away, but it's not that long. But it's weird to see it all packaged up that early.
But that's the thing. It's the first. I mean, look again. Wii U. I know it exists. Whatever. It's the first new next generation console thing that we've had in like 7 or 8 years at this point. So the idea of a shiny new box full of fresh shiny video game magic is a thing to be at least a little bit excited about. So yeah, I mean, I saw that and I was a little bit. I don't want to say giddy, but I was definitely a little bit like, new console soon, yay!
Yeah, that is definitely fair. I don't know. I didn't see much else that was all that interesting.
It was the
we'd
weekend.
we'd probably be reaching to talk about free to play SingStar.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say let's not reach there. Let's not reach to that direction.
SingStar seemed all right. I don't know how. Sure, free to play. That seems like a viable business model for a karaoke game. Here was actually some news that came out. You see this stuff about Criterion?
No.
So they're down. They're like splitting into 2 studios.
Okay.
Where let me actually pull up an actual headline. The basics of it is that the core of Criterion has split off and they become Ghost UK. Yeah.
Okay.
But
I think that's the name
whereas
of
the rest
a black metal band, but all right.
where wait, let me actually read it so I'm getting this right. And see, Ward explicitly stated that much of Criterion left to continue working on Need for Speed in the Ghost UK is now a Need for Speed studio. They are heading up the Need for Speed franchise going forward, whereas Criterion has maintained their name, and then there are 17 people, and they are off making something completely new. And then he also, this was Alex Ward on Twitter. This wasn't even a press release. He just sort of started spouting about it on Twitter as he is wont to do. But he started to sort of defend EA because there were people that immediately sort of came out sort of backlashing against this news, saying like, oh, EA is ruining yet another studio. And Alex Ward's perspective on it was, well, no, we've set up this. We found these people that want to make Need for Speed games, and we're going to make better Need for Speed games than have been seen in the past. And we're also getting to split off and do our own thing and start something brand new, which, that seems fine. Like it's at least they're getting the option to go and kind of make their own thing and not go down completely the Need for Speed black hole for the foreseeable future.
What was the last non-Burnout original thing that Criterion made? It was that shooting game that they kept referring to as Black. Yes, gun porn. So let me be the first to say that my hope is that they are doing something more interesting than Black with their time, because they are incredibly talented studio. I really like what those guys do. I like Alex Ward a lot. I hope what they are working on is something cool, and because I know it's not going to be another Burnout sequel, sadly. So let's hope it's something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Feder Dave in the chat asked, the big question: does this mean we'll never get another Burnout game?
That's not happening.
Yeah, this does seem to suggest that Burnout is sort of on ice for the time being. But if the Burnout franchise goes out with Burnout Paradise, that is a pretty high note. To end a franchise.
And let's be real, a lot of Burnout has found its way into Need for Speed over the last few years. So it's not like there's none of that in existence right now. It's just, not quite as crash happy and obliterative as perhaps Burnout was. But, that sick-ass sense of speed and the cars and, some of the design stuff, that's all there in Need for Speed now. So
let's see. James Pond Bombastica. That's... Alex, you might have just signed yourself up.
Nope. I don't remember
to check
anywhere
out
near
James
enough.
Bond.
No.
Well, we'll just have to start a Kickstarter to get Alex to take a look at James Pond and record himself.
If I make enough, the last stretch goal was me just hanging myself at the end of it.
Oh, dark.
Yeah.
Let's see. Mr. Craggle asked, Rox started this generation with table tennis. That's not the end of his question, but I should point out, although that was not a game for me, that is well revered as one of Rockstar's best games, and
Table
has
tennis is
nothing to do
awesome.
with what they normally do. So
That is
yeah,
that was an
uh,
early ass 360 game too. That was like one of the earliest examples of kind of graphically what the 360 could do, and that game was pretty great.
yeah, it was impressive visually looking. So yeah, it was as Mr. Craggle points out, it was used to demonstrate their Rage engine. Do you see them doing something similar for next gen? I mean, if we're getting GTA 5 right at the end of this generation, I mean, I guess it
Yeah.
wouldn't shock me if they chose to do something small and different at the start of the next, but they haven't done something small in a while.
No.
And it's also hard to predict. It's the idea that I'm going to sit here and actually know what Rockstar is up to next seems like that's not what a gambling person should do. It seems like something that
No.
you're destined to lose. Otherwise, you're going to be sitting here claiming that Agent is still in development, which it might be. I don't know.
Also, if they were going to do something as an early benchmark for the next gen stuff, I think we would have heard about it by now. I think they probably would have at least said. I mean, I know that they're one of those studios that can get away with announcing their game 6 months before it comes out, and then still selling millions of copies. But I think at this point, if they have some smaller project in the works, we probably would have heard something about its existence by now. Also, are they still working on Agent or whatever that thing is? Like, isn't that something that's theoretically still in development?
Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So who
Hmm.
knows what they're doing right now?
Cancel all that stuff and make believe too.
Yeah.
Ergo Demise asks, how do you guys feel about reviews on early access or games you pay for that are still in alpha/beta? Does it
Mm.
does it being for sale condemn it to an incomplete review?
I think that's one of those cases where if you're gonna write about an early access game, I don't know if a straight review is the format for it. I think that's one of those things where you can write an article saying, "Hey, here's what this game is right now. Here's what you're paying for right now. Here's what it's aiming to be." And you can certainly put in something that says, "Should I buy this right now?" And that can be the kind of your criticism on that level if you want. But I don't know. I think giving scored, final theoretically reviews to games that are very, visibly in alpha and beta, even if you are, if they are charging people for them to essentially participate in that stuff, it just, I don't know. I feel like it just kind of immediately invalidates the review whenever that game, eventually comes out to its full version. But then again, that's the same problem that we've had for years in game reviews, where games that come out at launch are broken in some way or have some major problem, and then they patch them a week later, and suddenly that review is no longer relevant. So that gets into a whole other conversation about the kind of nebulousness of reviews and whether they can be sort of whether they can shift that way over time. But I think you're doing a game a disservice if you're just writing your review like while it's in early access, because they are very definitively saying this is not the final game. You can participate in this, and you can charge. You can pay to be a part of this right now if you want to. And I think you can certainly write something about that, but I don't think that's where your final review should go.
Yeah, and I think from our perspective as a site that does a pretty limited selection of reviews, our sort of policy on it has been we kind of look at a lot of those games in quick looks
Yeah.
where it's like, look, you can buy this game. That means it's fair game to be not a preview thing. This is us judging the game in some way, but quick looks don't have scores attached. Quick looks are things that we can come back to in another quick look or in a different show, and at least it's saying, hey, here's our take on it. Here's what we think of it so far.
Yeah.
Here's a little about what it is. That gives you at least some information before you actually click buy. Especially given that there are some early access games that charge more for early access than how much the actual final game is going to cost. So that's kind of how we approach that. But I'm with you that. Writing a review for a game ahead of time when they're being pretty clear and upfront about the nature of it would seem to be a little suspect.
Yeah. So I would say, find ways to cover that stuff, but don't just review it, because that's not okay.
Civet asks a pretty specific, quick question. How demanding is a machine for pigs on the PC? Not demanding. You'll probably be okay with a pretty modest PC. And if you've never played the original Amnesia, The Dark Descent, I played that thing to completion on an aging MacBook, not even a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
So that thing scales like crazy and will run on just about anything. Aeronautical asks, what is the next big intensive game you're planning on diving into once you're past GTA? I'm not sure. Is there a game as big as GTA,
I mean,
or even in that ballpark?
there's nothing coming out for a couple of weeks that's anywhere near as that that level of giant. But in terms of stuff I'm kind of looking forward to before the end of the year, I mean, oh hell, I don't even remember what games are coming out this year. To be honest with you, my brain is kind of shut off as far as that stuff goes. I have a bunch of backlog games I've been meaning to play. I still haven't played Tomb Raider, so I've been trying to find an excuse to do that.
I got these games. I'm looking forward to these games.
Yeah, see that. There you go.
Ooh.
I might actually sit down and play Puppeteer at some point. That seems like the kind of thing my girlfriend would really enjoy, either playing or watching me play. But yeah, you should definitely jump in on some Rayman first chance you get, because that shit is good.
Yeah. So and supposedly I've heard this from a couple of people. So Puppeteer has a 3D. It's one of the few. It's not bragging about it. It's not like something I'd even heard about before the game came out. But it has 3D and apparently looks spectacular. And as long as I'm here at my parents' house, my mom has a 3D TV downstairs, so I am intending to actually play that game in 3D, at least some chunk of it. Because I've never played a game for more than I think maybe 10 minutes in 3D, so I'd actually like to give that a shot and see how that works.
Yeah, the only 3D games I've played have been on 3DS, and I played pretty much all of Luigi in 3D just because I kind of liked it. But as far as the console stuff goes, I never tried any of that PS3 3D stuff, so I don't know how it is. But yeah, by all means, try it out. Report back. Let us know how Puppeteer in 3D is.
A lot of people asking if any of us will try the Wonderful 101. I would like to, but that is probably one of those games that I will, alongside Pikmin 3, try and get to in December, when we're getting close to having to start thinking about our lists. And I don't suspect those two will maybe be in hot contention, but
I like Pikmin a lot, but I'm not sure if it's going to make I'm not even sure it currently makes my top 10 in terms of stuff I've played this year. But what little I've played of Wonderful 101 at events and stuff, I really didn't care for that much. I mean, if I'm completely honest, I think it's a cute-looking game. I think it has kind of a neat premise, but mechanically, it really did almost nothing for me. I might try it out again before the year is over if I can borrow someone else's copy, but it did not seem like the kind of game that I would really get into. And I've read some of the reviews, and it seems like some of the problems I had with its controls and its mechanics were echoed by a lot of people in terms of the final product, so it just doesn't really seem like my thing.
Oh, people are pointing out, my most anticipated game, but anticipated might be in quotes, Beyond.
Ah, yes. Well, that is going to be interesting.
Cannot wait to play that. Cannot wait. Psyched.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking about maybe trying to pipe up to review that one, because I'm super curious about it, and as someone, I have a weird relationship with David Cage games. I really liked Indigo Prophecy when that game came out. It kind of fell apart at the end, but at the time I didn't really think it had. Then I went back and played it again a few years later. I was like, no, wait, everything everyone said about this ending is absolutely true. This is kind of fucked up and stupid. But the first 3/4 of that game, couple of weird things aside, really good. I did not get around to finishing Heavy Rain, because at a certain point I kind of lost interest in that narrative altogether, and I just didn't like what it was doing mechanically enough to want to keep going. So, going into Beyond, I kind of have a mixed experience with his stuff, and I played it at a couple of different demos, and I've played both that original demo, which was, kind of more just about the spooky ghost stuff, and then I played the crazy Mogadishu, Zero Dark Jody fucking, crazy demo that everyone saw at E3 this year. And I have no idea what to think about that game. I have no idea what to make of it. I have no preconceptions of what that game is going to be, and that's kind of why I'm interested in it and why I actually kind of want to play it and review it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100% on board with you to have that perspective on that game. So, as we wind this down, what do you got on tap for this week? What are you doing?
So I'll be able to talk to you on the next show about the stuff I saw last week, Batman and some of that other stuff. That was when the embargo will be up. I'm also going to go see a couple of other smaller games this week that I'm looking forward to, including the new Adventure Time game. Yay! I'm excited about that. No one else probably is excited about that, but I am.
That's like the dungeon crawler one,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. The hey, let's explore the dungeon because I don't know.
That's a great title.
Yeah,
That's an amazing title.
that is a very Adventure Time kind of title. So I'm gonna check that out at some point this week. But other than that, it's actually a slower week. So I'm gonna get some filming done that I've been meaning to do. I collected some older games last week and started playing through them a little bit so that I could record some bombasticas. I've been having weird tech problems trying to get my N64 to record footage properly on my computer, but I think I finally worked that out on Friday, so I should be able to finally do some stuff off some old saves that I have. And other than that, I'm going to finish Saints Row, and then GTA shows up tomorrow, and that's probably going to eat up all of my nights this week. But that's fine. I'm more than happy to let it. And that's kind of my week right now. What are you looking at right now?
Yeah, I've got to sort of finish off Amnesia and Outlast. That is sort of my plan for this week. I need to cut those guys loose so I can continue on as the game onslaught kind of continues. I got to sit down and figure out what exactly how much I'm doing for the site this week. I'm definitely in this week sort of in preparation mode to try and get a bunch of stuff ready for October. I've been playing these horror games and then wanting to sit down and write all these stories that I've been kind of jotting down, but I want to save that stuff for a more appropriate venue. So this week might be a lot of that kind of stuff. But yeah, other than that, just like regardless of what I'm doing on the site, just trying desperately to sort of catch up so that my backlog doesn't get too bad. Because yeah, I think I saw on Twitter Steven Totillo of Kotaku saying that he spent 42 hours in Grand Theft Auto before he sat down and wrote his review, which means that game's big. There's going to be a lot to do in that game, and
there's a lot of map in that game. You're going to see a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to it. So, well, we'll leave it there, and then we will join Ever again on Friday. Talk about some of the games that you checked out this week and whatever I'm able to play through.
We can give some of our actual
appreciate everyone.
5.
Yeah. Being informed. I hear that helps. So that'll do it for Bombin in the AM. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we will see you guys again on Friday.
How?